Director James Mangold is getting himself in a little bit of hot water over remarks he made recently in regards to his upcoming Star Wars movie because he says, according to this article from That Park Place, he doesn't want to be handcuffed by George Lucas's lore, and that's in regards to his movie that's supposed to be set, I believe, 25,000 years before the events of the original Star Wars movies, and he's setting it so far away from the previous movies that we all know that he basically thinks like, okay, there's no ties to anything else. And if we just can do whatever we want with the lore, then there's basically nothing shackling me to what's already been created. So I'm free basically to do whatever I want. At least that's kind of his mindset about this. I think there are some issues in regards to that. Now, I'm not necessarily trying to attack James Mangold because I do think he's a talented director and he has made some good stuff in the past. I mean, he's also made some crap things in the past, but I don't really think this is something that he should be wading in on, at least not in the manner that he's doing. I think lore is important to these sort of things. And even if you try to go in the past like this and think that you have kind of like a clean slate, well, no, there has been lore established for that. It's just Disney chooses to ignore it because, well, they don't like to be shackled to George Lucas's lore, so to speak. James Mangold recently spoke about his upcoming Star Wars movie, noting that he doesn't want to be handcuffed by George Lucas's lore. The James Mangold Star Wars movie is still going forward, confirmed to be an origin story for the Jedi Order. James Mangold directed the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and yeah, it is one of those movies I would say of his that wasn't really for the best. Recently shared his thoughts and plans for Star Wars Dawn of the Jedi in an interview with MovieWeb. Mangold explained he wants to focus on creative liberty, unburdened by decades of beloved lore established by George Lucas. And that's the thing. There already, like I said, there already is established lore for the era that he's trying to work in. The issue, though, is pretty much the issue with anything in Star Wars Legends at this point. Once Kathleen Kennedy took over, she declared everything outside of the mainline movies to be non-canon. So a lot of creatives think like, okay, that means we can do whatever we want. But I don't think it really works out too well. I mean, can you do that? Sure. But you got to think when you have something that has decades of work behind it, that means there was a lot of people spending time to think things through and make sure the decisions that they made for events that set in the past actually line up with what was going on in the Star Wars that we all know. And like all those, the main movies that they say are canon. Now, yes, you can go back and try to create a different lore and have that actually mesh up too. But you come to find out, at least I think more times than not, things just don't really work out because then when you start examining it, which is something that fans would actually be doing, they're passionate about something to the point where they're going to examine it and be like, wait a minute, what you created here doesn't necessarily make sense with what we already know. And that's when you start getting those errors versus if you just stayed true to the lore that came before Disney purchased it. Well, then everything would work out, at least work out a lot better. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect that way, but I think more times than not, that is probably the better approach to these sort of things. To me, the really important aspects are the freedom to make something new. He said George Lucas's storytelling pattern for Star Wars was meant to be like poetry, give it structure and depth. Mangold apparently wants to defy this traditional method to work in something original, as he put it. And I would just say, if you want to do something original, then do something original. Don't do a Star Wars property. Like, you can even do something original that's akin to Star Wars, like we saw with Zack Snyder doing for Rebel Moon. Now, granted, that really wasn't that good, but I'm not saying a talented writer and director couldn't make something good that's kind of in that same vein. So I would actually suggest James Mangold should probably be doing something like that, as opposed, if he really wanted to be original, as opposed to just basically doing another Star Wars project, but wanting to disregard anything that came before it in order to make his own movie. That's why Star Wars Dawn of the Jedi is going to be a prequel. James Mangold told MovieWeb that the film will take place thousands of years before the main Star Wars story. It's an area and a playground that I've always wanted to explore, the director explained, and that I was inspired by as a teenager. I'm not that interested in being handcuffed by so much lore at this point that It's almost immovable. The precise date of the film within the Star Wars timeline, according to Mangold, is 25,000 years before any other Star Wars film. In Star Wars Legends, the date is better known as 25,000 BBY, before the Battle of Yavin. In Legends, that is the year the Jedi Order was founded, because, like I said, there's already established lore for this sort of thing. There's books on it. Even the game, The Old Republic, kind of explored these sort of things a bit more. So there is something to draw from, but he just wants to basically pick and choose what he's drawing from, because if he really wanted to be original, it's like, well, we already know 25,000 BBY is when the Jedi Order was established. If you want to do something different and like truly be original, and they say like, oh, or they're not shackled by legends or anything like that, it's like, well, then go like 50,000 BBY or 10,000 or whatever. I mean, you can just do something completely different, just so you're establishing that, no, this is a new thing, that we're not falling back on anything else that's come before. Like you could say like 10,000 BBY is when the Jedi Order was established. I mean, there's really nothing stopping them at this point. But the problem is, and it's the problem with a lot of Star Wars creatives since Disney took over, because they want to have free reign to do basically pick and choose from the canon. And that's something that people have pointed out in the past. Like Thrawn, for instance, when he appeared in Ahsoka, it's like a lot of people point out that he doesn't seem like the actual Thrawn that they know from the novels and from the show. And that, well, maybe a little bit more from the show, but a lot of that is because when Disney is declaring stuff non-canon, that's not saying that you can't draw from it at all. It's just saying that you're not constrained to what's established in the previous books and other material on Star Wars. So in essence, by declaring everything in the Legends non-canon, Star Wars, like Lucasfilm is basically saying anyone coming into Star Wars to create something is free to pick from it, like vultures or something like that. They can just choose like, okay, I like this aspect, I like these things, I'll just kind of combine these together because that's what I personally want, and ignore everything else. But again, when you're creating a really fleshed out universe like with Star Wars, well, then everything kind of has to work together in a somewhat of a way. I mean, like I said, most people who watch Star Wars won't notice this sort of thing, but true fans of something, like, I mean, the whole point of being a fan is you're passionate about it. You're going to really like immerse yourself into it and dive into it. And when you do this sort of thing, it's not going to appease them, because they're going to find things that doesn't necessarily work. Not that it's different from what they previously knew, because a lot of people can get over that, but it's not going to necessarily work within its own universe, and you're going to have a lot of plot holes and flaws and other things like that. But I think Disney has pretty much accepted at this time that that's not the audience they're going for. They're not trying to appeal the actual Star Wars fans. They're trying to appease basically the normie audience, so the people who would be impressed because like, oh, look, there's lightsabers and there's laser blasters and there's ship battles and other things like that. And I'm not saying that stuff isn't cool and I don't like those sort of things, but they're not trying to go after the crowd who is really wanting to dive in and immerse themselves into the Star Wars lore. They're just wanting to appease people who would just be happy to mindlessly consume the movie that they have while they're watching it, and then just kind of forget about it, because they don't want to make something that would stand the test of time like the original Star Wars trilogy did. They want something that will just basically stand up while it's released in theaters. It'll get people's money, and then they can just move on to the next thing. We've seen Disney do that with a lot of other franchises that they're in charge of right now, like the Marvel movies. I mean, just think about it. Do you actually go back and watch anything? I would say past Endgame, but even stuff that came out a little bit before that, pretty much. No, I know for me personally, I don't really go back and watch stuff past phase 2, or at least not regularly, not like the ones from the early ones, because they're just not meant to stand up like this. And a lot of the Disney Star Wars is pretty much more the same, and that's kind of what they're leaning into at this point. And if they really want to do that thing and go kind of tackle Star Wars in that way, well, then fine, they can do that. But all it's doing is basically just damaging it as a brand and making it something that we can see right now where they're struggling to gain viewership on their streaming platform for it. And if they're going to continue to do things like this, I think they're going to struggle to actually make money at the box office as well. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news And don't forget to click that like button and share this video out there because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.